Hello my friends, welcome back to Cafe Bagheri. Today we're going to make a very popular Persian stew called the Fesenjoon. Now Fesenjoon is usually made with duck legs, walnut, and pomegranate molasses. Today we're going to make it with chicken drumsticks. When I'm making this stew, like a lot of my Persian stews, it's usually for a large crowd, family and friends that gather. But today I'm going to give you a recipe just for 2 people. Before we get started, I want to let you know that recently we passed 6,000 subscribers. I want to thank all of you who've been watching my videos, liking, and sharing this content with your friends and family. If you're someone who just got here, haven't had a chance to subscribe yet, this is a perfect opportunity to subscribe to this channel and hit that little bell button so we can keep in touch. Now, let's get started making some delicious tangy Fesenjoon right now. Let's get started with our 2 main ingredients, walnuts and chicken. So I'm going to do the walnuts first. We're going to grind the walnuts as fine as we can. We are going to use a food processor. For the recipe for 2, I have half a pound of walnuts. Depending on how fine or coarse you want the walnuts in your sauce, you process the nuts longer or shorter. After you've made this dish once or twice, you'll get an idea how you like it. The way I like it is real fine, so I do process this about 30 seconds to 45 seconds, and that's just going to be fine, okay? Here's what we were going for. And now I'm going to get everything off of this blade. Be very careful, these are very sharp. Little frying pan here. I have been keeping this warm on low. Now, once I'm ready to put the processed nuts in the frying pan, and we don't use any oil, we're just going to roast the ground nuts to give them some depth of flavor. Try to watch this, don't walk away from it. Don't let it sit there because it's going to get dark and burn real quick. I'm going to bring the temperature up to medium high and then start pushing this around. Let it sit for 10 seconds to get the initial heat going. The technique of roasting ground nuts and long simmering it with some sort of poultry is one that is used in several culinary cultures. So Fesenjoon, chicken mole, and tikka masala, they all use the same technique but with different flavors. So here we are, you keep pushing, and it's already, I can see that it's releasing some of the oil from the walnuts. See at the bottom of this pot, you see that's the walnut oil that's releasing. And in fact, after this goes in the stew, the long simmer releases some oil. That's very healthy oil. It's not animal fat. So some people originally in Iran, they like to leave that there, and it's tasty with the rice that they eat it with. After 2-3 minutes, you will be able to smell the difference, and it's starting to roast. So I'm going to bring the bowl here. So we're going to put this aside because it's going to go in our stew in a minute. We're going to put the pan away and start working on our chicken. Now, I told you initially this dish, which originated on the Caspian Coast in the north where they have a lot of ducks. So duck legs are common for this dish, but we're going to make it with chicken. Now, in order for it to look better and kind of resemble duck legs, what I do is I cut around the top of these drumsticks and push the meat back, kind of like do a lollipop effect that they do in barbecue. We're going to put salt and pepper on these guys all over. All right. Now we're going to get our Dutch oven on here. Let me show you this thing. Even if you go to the lowest simmer, the nuts can start burning at the bottom of the pot unless you constantly simmer it. One solution to get the intensity of the heat reduced a little bit is there are these heat diffusers. See? Put it on your electric or gas stovetop, and then put your Dutch oven or pot that you're using for making the stew. This is what I'm using right now. It's called a for $4. You can probably order it on Amazon. They're similar products. So we're going to go on medium high here. I'm using grapeseed oil. I'll do a couple of tablespoons and I'll let it heat up. We're going to lay them down on one side and cook about 4 to 5 minutes on each side and then turn them. You don't want to cook them through, obviously, but you want to give them some golden color on the outside. All right, we're halfway through cooking these drumsticks. I've turned them all once around. We're about 4 or 5 minutes into it. I'm going to cook them one more round all around. As you notice, I removed, when I was telling you about this heat diffuser, that's intended for when we put the nuts in the stew for the final phase. So I took it out from under my pot because I need maximum heat for the chicken right now. As you can see, it's been removed. And then one thing that you notice, if your chicken sticks to the bottom of the pot, you just let it take its course. Just give it time, it will release and then you can turn it, okay? Kind of a light golden color is starting to develop. One thing I want you to note, see these little pieces of skin? It's impossible to keep them all through this long sautéing and then simmering process to stay presentable on there. So what I do is I keep them on initially for flavor. I am going to now remove these one by one and put them in this bowl, right? Before they go back into my stew to simmer, I'm going to take off these little shriveled up pieces of skin, and I don't like them personally. So this is cooked outside, but the inside is not completely cooked yet. But we're going to use the goodness and the flavor that's at the bottom of the pot right now. We're going to now get our onions added here. So we don't need to add any fat to this for cooking of the onions and spices. We're using the chicken fat. Now, if you were doing this with duck legs, you would have a big puddle of oil here from the ducks because ducks have a lot of fat. In that case, I would skim some of it off and just use it for something else and leave about a tablespoon in there. We have our onion cooking here. Before we add the liquid and everything else, the turmeric is going to have to be added to the onions. This will get some of the aroma and the depth of flavor out of the turmeric. Okay, this is when I want to put my diffuser here. I can smell the turmeric kind of rising. We're getting some flavor out of there. Now it's time to add our liquid. Right here. 3 cups of chicken broth. You can use chicken stock. Important thing is this has to be hot. You need to microwave or however you heat it. Don't add cold stock to your stews, ever. Now we're gonna kind of go up to boil and scrape the bottom to get all of the brown bits from sauteing the chicken. While this is coming up to heat, the next things to go in is our brown sugar, cinnamon. It's all in the recipe. I believe that's a teaspoon. I add a little cardamom for the aroma and the sweetness of it. It serves the same purpose the cinnamon does in this stew. Now, the characteristic flavor of this stew, Fesenjoon, is that it combines sweet and sour, which in Persian we call malas. The original recipe that I've seen in Rozan Montazami's book or other places says in order to achieve the tanginess for this stew that you need, the pomegranate molasses should be enough. But over time, people have found that if you like a little more sweet or a little more sour, you control that with lime juice, with sugar, and with cinnamon and other things, give it some more character. So as you make this recipe, determine if you need to adjust the sweetness or the tartness outside of this recipe and make it your own. At the end, we're gonna add some lime juice. One of my signature additions to a lot of stews is a little bit of heat, a little bit of spiciness. I use cayenne pepper. This is a pinch or an eighth of a teaspoon of cayenne that I put in there. There you go. So now we're basically simmering this, and guess what goes in there? We're going to add our ground walnuts and then stir it up. So remember, this is already at simmer temperature. So it's going to be slowly incorporating all of those flavors in here. This is a dried plum from Central Asia, from Bukhara area, traditionally. They're like apricots in flavor. They usually come with pits. Do not leave the pits in because you don't want to break people's teeth, okay? Stir that in. So I think we have everything in here. I'm gonna crank this up a little bit to see the bubbles one more time. That means it's boiling again. I'm gonna drop it to simmer and put the lid on it and let it simmer for 20 minutes. All right, so the first 20 minutes of simmer is done. During the 20 minutes, once every 3-4 minutes, I stirred it just to make sure it's going steady. Because I have, again, the heat diffuser prevents the bottom from burning. If you did not have a heat diffuser or a rack of some kind under this pot, you would have to stir it pretty much once a minute to make sure the ground walnuts don't stick at the bottom and burn, okay? We're gonna return the partially cooked chicken back in here. Like I said, I leave these little scraps of skin on there for flavor, but before service time, before presenting, I'm gonna remove those. A little bit of juice, this is goodness. Don't lose it. It goes back in your pot, and you're gonna give it one little stir like that to make sure the juice comes over all the pieces of chicken. There you go. We're going to leave this on another 20 minutes of simmer. You don't need to stir per se, but just open it once every couple of minutes, 3 minutes, and just use your spatula to kind of move them around a little bit. All right, our second 20 minutes with the chicken. Now we're going to put our lime juice and the saffron. This is the saffron solution you've seen me make in our other videos, which is just ground saffron in hot water. Put about between 1 to 2 tablespoons in there. There you go. And some fresh squeezed lemon juice. That helps the aroma and color, and this one helps the tanginess, right? Now we're going to kind of sort of stir this a little bit, and it's going to simmer another 10 minutes. We're almost there. All right, we're back again. The last 30 minutes, the chicken was in there and getting well cooked, but you do not want these chicken legs or whatever, thighs or whatever you use in to disintegrate, and you want them to be presentable and servable. See what I told you about that skin? You want to just basically remove them before presenting it to your guests in the final plating. But they add a lot of flavor to the stew. And we got some ways to go to reduce the liquid, if you will. I'm gonna tent them with a foil, right? Put them aside here. Now we're gonna do what we do in the last step with any stew. Don't burn yourself. We need a little more salt. What you're checking for is salt, pepper, sweet and sour. Remember the term molasses, which is tangy? This thing is good with everything else. Just needs a little salt and just a little pinch of pepper. Fresh ground black pepper. I'll just give it a stir. Now we're going to let this guy reduce uncovered. By the way, look at this oil. Because our chicken drumsticks didn't have a lot of fat, this is all walnut oil. This is very healthy. So now we're going to let this simmer between 20 to 30 minutes just uncovered like this at simmer temperature. I'm going to go for the upper end of that, 30 minutes, because of the amount of liquid and the runniness that I see. I want it a little thicker, right? So we're going to set a timer for 30 minutes. This guy is going to reduce about a quarter down. It's going to be thicker. We get this is usually enjoyed with Persian saffron rice, then we're going to serve it. Okay, here we have it, Khoresh Fesenjoon. As always, I serve my Persian stews with Persian saffron rice. We do have a video on our channel for that. Like all slow, long simmered stews, the next day the stew tastes a lot better because it has had time for all the ingredients to infuse together. So if you're serving this on a Saturday night, I recommend making it on a Friday, okay? Thank you for being with me today. Please like this video if you liked what you saw. If you haven't subscribed yet, this is a perfect opportunity to subscribe and hit that little bell button so we can keep in touch. And I do hope to see you very soon right here at Cafe Bagheri for another episode. And I cannot wait to have one of these drumsticks right now.